going to be some need for some meeting space adjustments. Secondly, bandwidth, your network may not be ready, and you can go in and test those things and start to work out those problems before your first couple of meetings crash. And then number three, quality is going to continue to increase more and more.
As businesses reopen, what will the new work environment look like? Is video here to stay? How to best utilize the power of video for small to medium sized business environments. Hi, my name is Andre Chandra, founder and CEO of Propelo Media. Leaders rise up in challenging times. In today's Ask an Expert series, we're joined by Matt Slack, founder and president of AV Solutions, who help organizations have great meetings with their teams and customers all over the world from the conference rooms. Now, the COVID realities have changed the perception and ease of video conferencing, but there are important considerations that Matt is highlighting as more and more people return to work. Let's hear it from him. Matt Slack from AV Solutions, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
Hey, great, Andre. Thanks for having me.
All right. Can you tell the audience who you are and what you do?
I'm a guy. I tend to create simple experiences for people who have complicated business technology situations. Most commonly, I work in audiovisual and video conferencing for mid-market, sometimes larger market organizations that need help with their AV conference rooms working simply. So our goal is usually that you can start your meetings within a minute or less of walking into a room that you've never been in before.
Got it. Now, before we started, you actually shared a little bit how COVID-19 has impacted your family, man. So your family, your wife and kids. Maybe you can share a little bit how COVID has impacted you personally and also business-wise.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think it's very similar to a lot of other entrepreneurs. We fall into the category of definitely impacted, but in the long run could be very good. But it also could potentially threaten to put us out of business because of pivots that we are or are not able to make. So as an entrepreneur, it's, how do I connect to the right people in our community, given that there's no physical meetings going on, to ask the questions of our clients and prospects and community to understand where are things going and where are the needs that people have so we can help jump in and solve those and generate revenue. So I think as a leader, it's a constant daily search to continue to try and build new and rekindle existing connections to get information and to just keep pivoting. As a business, it's really strange because our part in the value chain where we usually generate revenue is by providing expertise and products and systems in physical spaces. So we work in video conferencing and there is some licensure that we do for products like Zoom, etc. But a lot of the revenue is really from making sure that people can use their physical meeting spaces, and those spaces are closed.
A lot of companies, well, they have to turn to video conferencing for meetings because they can't meet in person anymore. So it's on one hand, it's that part, but on the other hand, what you do to facilitate these meeting spaces, that's not feasible at the moment. So Matt, as people start reopening their offices and returning to work, doing Zoom from the comfort of your own home, doing it, individually will be quite different from people coming together to an office setting and then having some conference call or video conference as a group. How do you think that new normal is going to look like?
So I think it's important that companies recognize that there's a few changes to video conferencing in the office environment than from the home environment. And some of these are going to catch people painfully by surprise, and it's not necessary. So one of the key changes is meeting space adjustments. So right now, video conferencing is working because we're both sitting in front of our personal computer, laptop, iPad, etc. And there's a camera distance and a microphone distance, and you can hear each other and see each other just fine. But as soon as you go back to the conference room, the TV's over on one wall, and your conference participants are farther away. And so as we try and fit in 3 people into this situation, we now have both video capture and audio capture complications that weren't present when everything was working from home.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we have, say, a leadership team of 5 people and only 2 or 3 of them are back at the office, how are you going to capture those 3 people? Are they all going to go into their own offices and they're going to open up their laptop and you're going to have 3 individuals? Well, maybe, but that poses other complications. And I think to some degree, we enhance the quality of our leadership conversations and our strategic conversations when we can actually be together in real-time debate. So having those 3 people in the same room is very useful to us, but it's going to require an adjustment to our camera positioning, our camera type, and in a lot of cases, our audio pickup. So that's the first thing to be aware of. The second thing is bandwidth issues, internet bandwidth issues that you may not be expecting. Right now, Andre is taking care of internet bandwidth on one end of this call, and Matt Slack is taking care of internet bandwidth on the other end. But now, if we go back to that scenario where we have 3 leadership team 3 leadership team members at the office, if they each connect into the call, have 3 times the video conferencing bandwidth happening from a single location, both going out and coming down. It actually starts to add up to a lot of bandwidth rather quickly, especially in many businesses. They had enough internet before, but once you start adding the video on top of it, you may not have enough bandwidth available. Secondly, related to bandwidth, real-time video conferencing bandwidth takes a lot more quality bandwidth than I think people realize. When we go to watch Netflix, it buffers. So it's very easy to get a super high quality video, but it's not all downloading in real time like an eye conversation. So I think it's important to realize that the real-time nature of video conferencing, along with the amount of bandwidth required for calls, offices are not necessarily prepared for that unless they were doing it beforehand. One of the ways that we help larger enterprises prepare for a higher volume of video conferencing is by going in there and running video conferences in real time and just letting it break their network, break their ISP, break whatever's going to happen, and then start to address the problems where the bottlenecks formed. Because most offices are not ready for a handful of people or more to begin video conferencing who weren't before.
Right. Especially if the arrangement is everyone stays in their offices and they all connect from each office. That's going to take a lot of bandwidth. Yeah.
Yep. I think the third and the final point is quality. Quality starts to come into play in a couple of different areas. So, if you think about having an iPhone 6, most current business people today would look at an iPhone 6 and the video on it is almost atrocious by today's standard. Pixelated. It's nothing like the current generations of iPhones and iPads and computers and even 4K TVs that we're accustomed to. In the same way, before COVID, video wasn't, let's say, rampant among the public. And now it is. But as it continues to be used, people are going to grow more sensitive and more aware to the level of video quality, the pixelation, the delays, the audio blips, etc. And it's going to become not necessarily a bigger problem, but it's going to be recognized as a bigger problem. At some point, it's going to start reflecting on the people in the meeting more than it does today. Today, if we can talk, we're like, hey, it's COVID, anything goes, here's my dog, right? But as this continues to merge and move forward in time, we've already seen these type of acceptability shifts in the enterprise space, and it gets less and less acceptable to have these types of blips and to have low quality video images and low quality video participation. One of the things to be that's interesting is our team who's been video conferencing for a long time. When we go to Zoom, we immediately notice how poor of quality the video is,
Right.
which is ironic because most of the people on Zoom are like, "This is great. I can see you. You're clear." But from the video that we're accustomed to doing over desktop, it's actually a serious step down. It's a
Correct.
much lower grade of video.
Right.
And as you step up into businesses that are trying to have strategic conversations, I think that that quality, the need for the quality starts to jump, especially if you add in a room that's got two or three people who are further away. You need more of the quality to be able to really read everybody well. So that's the 3 points are there's going to be some need for some meeting space adjustments. Secondly, bandwidth, your network may not be ready, and you can go in and test those things and start to work out those problems before your first couple of meetings crash. And then number three, quality is going to continue to increase more and more.
Now, how about the family side of things? Because things are changing quite differently, drastically over there as well.
Yeah, so Louisiana has been a little bit maybe more lax, at least in our immediate region, which is just outside of Baton Rouge and suburbs. Um, so while there has been a shutdown, we've still seen, there's a lot of traffic activity. They've maintained a lot of fast food restaurants and such were open through almost all of it. We've tried to not frequent any of those places because it seems like a common point for spreading the virus. The same time, our particular county, which is called parishes in Louisiana, our parish has had, some of the fewest cases, though we're surrounded by East Baton Rouge and a number of other parishes that have quite a few. And it's been strange. We have a nice big neighborhood. My son, they canceled his swim team lessons, and he was itching for something to do, and they had a Zoom call with these Olympic athletes. All of a sudden, he's decided he's going to do a triathlon, and he found one on his upcoming birthday at the end of June. So he's been training for the last month and a half, riding. One day, he rode 46 miles on his bike in our neighborhood in a single day. So he's gotten really serious about some things like that. So in terms of the impact of family, kind of lost a son because 4 hours a day, many days of the week, he's off riding, swimming, or running somewhere without having contact with other people. We're homeschoolers already, so in that sense, a lot of people think of homeschooling a variety of different ways, but in our house, it means a lot of work. My kids work into the evenings, they have for years. We've graduated one, and we've got one who's presently in the first or second grade. And none of that workload went away just because COVID happened, but their routine community touch points all shifted to Zoom. And so it's been interesting how we didn't really physically change spots because we were already at home, but the impact to my wife and to the kids was real because they no longer had those out of the house engagements that they would normally have through the week that kind of made a full whole life with interactions that kids need.
Right. Yeah. Now, speaking of business pivots, your company actually helps your clients bridge this technological gap, especially with meetings and audio visuals, setting up conferences, virtual conferences. Can you share a little bit more about the biggest decisions you've made since the outbreak, or these pivots that you mentioned earlier?
Um, well, I think it kind of starts back at the personal side. My wife and I have found ourselves in a financially sound position. We're certainly not set for life by any means, but our personal residence is paid for. We have a little bit of cash in the bank. And so, under those circumstances, I think the real serious decision started with what is right for our family and what do we want to do? Do we want to continue to develop the business? Do we want to continue to, keep pouring money into a business that doesn't have any revenue and we don't know when the revenue will return? We believe it will return, but we don't know when, we don't know how. Our team has, it's just a group of great, smart people, but we cost money. And so it's a relatively big burn rate, just for keeping the team together. So I think the first most important decision was that we're in on this. We believe in the business, including any pivots we may need to make short or long term. And our preference would be not only to keep those jobs and keep that team, but to help go build a great future and scale this from the couple of $1 million company we're at today on up to, a factor of 10 at least. We believe the market's there. We believe it's going to be there, and we'd like to see this through. So I think just the personal decision that we're even at the potential of taking on some debt and liquidating a lot of the assets we have, we're committed. What does that look like? I think brings about the next set of serious decisions. And I think some of that answer is we still don't know today what that looks like. Very grateful for the PPP. We've got it to work, keeping our team members employed. Um, at the same time, one of the things we've done is put together a spreadsheet that tracks at what point we basically burn through all the operational capital in the business, not just looking at it strictly on a bank account basis, but on kind of a profit and loss basis to see at what point are we taking on permanent debt to keep the doors open. And one of the things I've been looking at is, trying to just keep bringing in a little bit of light sales, whatever we can do, reduce expenses, etc., to move that window of going negative, move that window line out. Can we get it 30 days out? Can we get it 60 days out, etc.? Because as COVID continues to change the marketplace, every 2 weeks, really, companies think new things, governments are making different changes. I think the longer we can push that line out, the more clarity we'll have about what pivots are actually available to us. So, yeah, in terms of decision, I think it's the decision to watch that number and to try and make very reasonable decisions around the fact that we really want to preserve our capital to stay in the game long term, as opposed to stay in the game fully in the short term. And that's when I think that piece of information, that spreadsheet, keeps us clear on where do we stand today and when do we have to make some critical decisions. And in the meantime, just looking for additional capital, which we've been able to secure a little bit, additional sales, which we've been able to secure a little bit, to just keep moving that debt line forward, so we know the day that we have to cross over it, and it's a conscious decision, not a, oh my, I didn't realize this was happening.
Right. Yeah, speaking with a lot of different entrepreneurs, definitely cash flow management is one of the key things that probably not by choice, but we're forced to look at this a lot more closely, because, well, resources are scarce nowadays, and we don't necessarily know when the next business is going to come. Now, speaking of these decisions that and signals that you're looking at, in terms of post COVID-19 comeback strategies, for your particular,
pretty good open EO-like roundtables where they, via Zoom, bring some people together who don't compete because of different regions and are talking about things that are working or things they're considering. One of the interesting dynamics of our industry is, even within our industry, you have a lot of different specialization. And so what might work for one company isn't even remotely an option for another company, because the customers, even the lines of vendors sometimes are just dramatically different. So I think what we're looking to do is just continue to build our marketing team and our sales team to go out there and have the right open-ended conversations to find what kind of problems companies are wrestling with, that we can help solve. And I think that the answers we get to that help us find our way. Um, I hope most entrepreneurial companies are probably doing something similar. At this point, I don't feel confident that we're doing it well enough. And so it's really more about how could we do it better? How can we find more of the right people to talk to?
Mhm.
And, when everybody's locked up, particularly when we work with IT, everybody's locked up at some, home or office or wherever, buried trying to keep things running or make these quick pivots. The availability to have these conversations is in some ways even more limited than normal.
Mhm. Got it. Well, thank you, Matt, for being very forthcoming. Now, is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to share?
Um, I mean, just to make the comment that I think that this time is ripe for creativity, not just in our industry, but certainly for entrepreneurs. I think we're going to see amazing stuff come out of this time. What's that going to look like? Nobody knows. There's certainly going to be some people hurt and harmed through this. There are also going to be some people helped through this. And I think all of our goal is just to try and land on the side of, being able to not just make it through this, but find creative solutions that help make the world a better place and drag along as many people as we can.
Right, right. Well, those are wise words. So thank you for joining us here. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and in your heart. I wish you and AV Solutions the best of luck. I personally believe that there's light at the end of this tunnel, and this pandemic has to end someday. And we're hoping that the vaccine is on the way soon. And in the meantime, like you said, it's time to be creative to find solutions so that we come out of the tunnel relatively intact. So yeah, so thank you for your time. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yep. Thank you.